not a 19, 20-year-old or even a lieutenant that should be investigated. This is the system. This is the government. This is the policy.
Alternate Focus interviews Akai Sharon and Noam Kayut, both veterans of the Israeli Defense Forces. All young Israelis, male and female, with few exceptions, are required to serve 2 to 3 years of active military duty in the Israeli Defense Forces. Sharon and Kayut served during the Second Intifada, a 4-year-long bloodbath that claimed the lives of over 3,000 Palestinians and 950 Israelis. After thorough introspection, these young men have chosen to speak out about their experiences as self-described brutal occupiers of a disputed land. And Sharon and Kayut are not alone. They are members of a new forum for young Israeli Defense Forces veterans called Breaking the Silence. Now a worldwide exhibition, Breaking the Silence features photo and art displays and live speeches. Now, Sharon and Kayut share their stories.
Most of the missions that my unit was given and carried out were arrest operations, search operations, going into taking over cities or towns or villages, of course in the nighttime, and sometimes you would continue in the same place for a few days, searching, going one house to the other, searching them, taking over houses as observation points, or arresting people. And that's your routine. My routine was, or our routine was, that we never knew where we're going to be from one minute to the other. One night we could be in Nablus, the next night we could be in Gaza, the next night we could be in Hebron. And at a certain point you just lose track of where you are, who you are, and what you're doing, because you disrupt people's lives on a daily basis. And for me that was the most I think when I look at it today, when I reflect on it today, as someone who couldn't do that during your service, because you can't really live in a denial way of life where you can't look at what you're doing, you can't really reflect on it. But when I reflect on it today from this perspective, I can say that that was probably for me the deepest example of corruption. Not the extreme cases where there was shooting or stuff like that, but just thinking that there were hundreds of thousands of families that couldn't have one peaceful night of sleep in their homes. I mean, who in today in the USA, in Israel, and anywhere else would be willing to live like that? Not knowing if at 2 o'clock in the morning 20 soldiers will take over your house for a week. Not knowing, sitting in your living room and suddenly hearing smashing on the wall, and there is a hole in the wall, and suddenly 20 soldiers come to visit. And for me that was routine.
In the newspaper I saw an article about confiscation, car keys confiscation. When you detain car to enforce curfew, when you detain cars because they just passed the line that close to a checkpoint, whatever. And it's not the article and the soldier that brought out more or less 100 car keys and brought it to the press, but the response of the spokesman, of the IDF, the spokesman of the IDF, that said, this is an extreme case, a rotten apple, it will be checked, examined, and won't happen again. And now I gave the order to take Palestinian car keys and to detain cars hundreds of times in my unit. I saw in the West Bank boxes full of car keys and IDs that were taken and were supposed to be returned, and then I know my father read the newspaper before me, and I know that he believes I mean, he's from a different generation, where things maybe were better, or when people could believe the system, and he really thinks that this is an extreme case that won't happen again. And for me, it was a point of understanding that I'm not backed for what I did, and I didn't do it for fun. I got my orders. I thought it was okay. I thought I was a part of a system that protects Israel from terror attacks, and then I understand that it's just a game of keeping information inside and not letting anybody know. And how can you criticize? How can you ask questions? And that was maybe one of the first times that I asked what's going on here.
One time when we finished an operation in Nablus, and it was really destructive. We were 5 or 6 days straight in Nablus with a lot of IDF forces, tanks and APCs, and it was very destructive. I mean, the whole infrastructure of the city was torn up. There was a lot of houses that were either damaged or even destroyed, and there was a lot of shooting, mostly by the IDF, into the city. And when we got out of there, the first thing that happened when we left the city, got back to the army barrack, was I heard a radio news flash, which happens every hour in Israel. And it was going like, IDF forces left Nablus after a search and arrest operation, found this and that. And that's it. And I think that even then, I suddenly realized my parents are now sitting at home, they're listening to the radio, and they're sure that here we are, their heroes, their son, they sent, found weapons and ammunition and did this and that and so important things to defend this country, but they don't know the truth. They don't know that 99% of what we did there was destroy people's property, destroy their lives, but no one told them that. And I think, like Noam, when he just realized what where the truth is and where it's going, today I can say that was one time that I really started to think of how the reality is being kept, under the surface, hidden from the public.
You hear the radio or news and TV saying IDF forces returned fire to sources of fire. Now you know that we were shooting everywhere. You know that there is no such thing in daylight, sources of fire in urban areas, and
in nighttime.
You know that you can't really, from a barrack far away, you can't really see most of the time the exact place you're shooting in, and that sources of fire, which as a soldier you know that it's just a title, good for the news, but and this dissonance, we didn't hear it while serving.
I want to give you one example of something that we've exposed also in the press in Israel and in foreign press a few months ago about a revenge attack that was launched by the IDF after one night in February 2002. Two terrorists from the Islamic Jihad attacked an IDF checkpoint and killed 6 IDF soldiers. The same night, the Chief of Staff, the Minister of Defense, not some sergeant at a checkpoint, this is policy right from the top, decided to launch a revenge raid against Palestinian officers, some of them just traffic officers, all around the West Bank and Gaza. The next day, 15 Palestinian officers were dead, were reported dead. And we spoke with 5 different soldiers and officers in 2 different units that were part of these raids and part of the attacks on 4 different checkpoints in different areas, geographically had no connection whatsoever to the place that was attacked by the night on the IDF checkpoint. No connection. One was in Nablus, one was near Ramallah, and they just attacked, and the orders were just go there, shoot to kill. And in the briefing by the commanders, by the high-ranking commanders, commanders of units, brigade commanders, they were told that this is revenge. We are going to revenge the blood